Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of AWS Partners Unplugged. My name is Igor Alexiev, and I am your today's host. In this episode, we discuss MongoDB Atlas, and I welcome our guest speaker, Shane. Shane, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, indeed, Igor. Thank you. I'm Shane McAllister. I'm one of the leads on the developer relations team here in MongoDB. I've been at MongoDB for about 4.5 years and have done a lot of work with you, Igor, so I'm very looking forward to our conversation.
Awesome. And for the audience who may be not familiar with MongoDB Atlas, would you like to give a brief introduction what MongoDB Atlas is? And we'll talk more about what kind of partnership you have with AWS. But let's start with the product and itself.
Sure. So look, MongoDB has been around for a long time. MongoDB is a document database, a non-relational document database. Originally, downloadable, on-premise, open source, free to use, etc. And Atlas is our database as a service. So back in 2017, we took Atlas to the cloud we took MongoDB to the cloud and created Atlas. And in doing so, we were able to reduce a lot of the complexity for developers, essentially, to allow them to concentrate on the jobs that they need to do, creating the best applications, and allowing Atlas to take over everything else that usually a database administrator needs to be concerned about. So in terms of scalability, performance, reliability, failover, security, and everything else. And since 2017, since we've launched Atlas, we've seen a huge growth in Atlas as well. And, today now we have literally tens of thousands of customers. We've got millions of developers developing on MongoDB. And we are really considered not just a database anymore. We've spent the past 5-6 years creating what we call a developer data platform. So layered on top of the database, we have a whole host of developer services that allow, again, a lot of the heavy lifting to be done by Atlas, freeing developers time to work on what they're good at, which is building the best-in-class applications.
Awesome platform. Actually, I use it very frequently. I'm actually a partner solutions architect. I forgot to introduce my title. But I do use the platform. We work closely on integrations. I know you have your recently conference, your yearly conference, where you announce new things. And I know you do it every year. It's like your kind of cadence. Do you want to talk about what new and exciting things got introduced at this year's event? It was in New York City, my hometown.
Sure. Well, actually, New York is our largest event, but we do this actually in over 20 cities around the globe now. We used to do London and New York as our kind of marquee events. But we realized that we need to go and reach developers where they are. So rather than do a multi-day event in those locations, we're actually doing single-day events, but in much more cities. But you're correct. At New York in beginning of May was our .local event where we announced most of our new products, our new releases. Obviously, like most companies these days, it was a huge focus for us on AI. At that event over a year ago, back in 2023, we launched MongoDB Atlas Vector Search, which enables MongoDB to participate in this Gen AI revolution that's going on at the moment. Vector Search, there's lots of vector databases out there, as we all know, but MongoDB Atlas Vector Search is different insofar as it stores the vectors associated with your data in exactly the same document as your data. So your operational data and your vectorized data are alongside each other, making it much more performant and reducing the round trips and compute and everything else that's associated with doing that and keeping vectorized data up to date. But that was our announcement a year ago, but we've been building on that. And we launched a couple of key new things at .local New York. Particularly was the MongoDB AI Applications Program, or MAP as we call it internally here, which brings together AWS and a number of other partners to build out, reference architecture and best-in-class solutions for enterprises looking to build generative AI apps today. we also obviously use that .local event to announce a whole host of new features, etc. So from our perspective there, we brought in a ton of new things for Atlas Stream processing, for data on the go. We brought out a public preview of our Atlas Edge server. So this is the server that powers IoT devices, etc. as well too. Lots of new performance enhancements across our range of products that we have in the developer data platform, and how I suppose they can be monitored and kind of looked at from a performance perspective as well too. So we launched an awful lot. .local is also a chance for us to get together. So obviously our partners were there too. You were there, Igor, and I know that you joined us on our MongoDB TV live stream to talk about some of the things that we do together as a company.
Yeah, absolutely. One day we're going to make this podcast a video podcast, and then it will be a streaming video show just like your MongoDB TV.
I hope.
Yeah. A lot of things you mentioned, a lot of things to unpack there. I actually totally agree. Like, speaking of partner experience, and making this event multi-city is actually, I think, is a big thing. Because I travel to a lot of your events, and I see that some areas are underserved. And because you attract a lot of local developers in those areas. So that worked in South California, it worked in Toronto, lots of attendance from developers in the area. So that was a great idea, actually.
It was a big change for us, a little bit of a gamble maybe as well too, but it has certainly paid off, particularly in the regions where we see actually most growth. So in the APAC region, for example, we're doing a lot of events reaching the developers over there, which is great to see, because I suppose before this, they were probably a little bit underserved. So I think it's worked out really well, being able to do shorter, more compact single-day events, but in much, much more cities.
And even though it was a short event, but we packed so many things there, I had a chance to run a lab, a workshop, which was also very well attended. It was a hands-on activities. And I think the kind of attendees that come to your conferences, they're developers, they're hands-on people, and they want to try these things for themselves. It's always great to see like a great attendance of the software engineers, people trying different things. And they were trying building generative AI applications with MongoDB Atlas. That was our workshop. Yeah, so and it's great to see you keep introducing new features and trying to kind of broaden your appeal to the community that is building generative AI applications. And I want to jump a little bit ahead. We were going to talk about other things, but I want to talk about generative AI capabilities first, because you've worked on several projects where we've implemented integrations between MongoDB, Atlas, and AWS. With generative AI capabilities such as Q Developer, and we're working now on some other ones coming up. But I want to talk about this experience you had with developing integration with Q Developer.
I think the key thing and the thing that was really nice, and particularly about our partnership with AWS, is to get the invite, to get asked to see how do we contribute, how do we make things better. As you mentioned, look, we attract a lot of developers. We're a developer data platform. And for us to be able to allow developers to get started and get up and running quicker with MongoDB is like gold as far as we're concerned. So as you mentioned, we do a lot of hands-on activities. And key to us in watching what was going on in the AI space, we've seen the rise of code assistants. And one of the things that we've seen with these tools being picked up either by junior developers or mid-level or even senior developers, that everybody is leveraging these tools now to different degrees. For junior developers, they're kind of leveraging the tools to on-ramp quicker, to get started a bit quicker, to get up and running quicker. To senior developers who are actually using these types of tools to offload the mundane tasks and the things that they don't want to get stuck doing to something that can help them. And we've seen this and watched it from afar. So we were delighted to be asked to be able to get involved in the fine-tuning and training of Q for developers to make it a better out-of-the-box experience for anybody developing with MongoDB. So it was great to be involved. It was very much a learning curve, I think, for most of the folks in MongoDB who were involved in that. Understanding what was required from almost a data science level to give to the team there in Q for developers to be able to fine tune and train Q, the underlying LLM on that, to be able to do MongoDB tasks. We started off with, I suppose, CRUD tasks, the basics, right? How to connect to MongoDB, how to create objects, how to update them, how to read them, how to delete them, etc. The usual things. And once we got over that hurdle and making sure that it was performant in that space across a number of the most popular languages, Python, C#, Java, JavaScript, etc., we then got a little bit deeper. And to that end, we had to actually go back into our own developer tools and our own docs to see what were we putting out there as best case and best practice, and how do we take that and give it to the AWS team to help improve Q Developer even more. And the one thing I learned, Igor, is that this is never one and done. It's a constant kind of evolution. So as we release new features, as we release new ways of interacting and interfacing with MongoDB, we need to make sure that the code assistant tools out there also keep up to date. So we're getting clever about how we go about this as well.
And I actually had a chance to kind of demo the tool, demo code assistant, demo Qt for developer to actual developers. It was kind of interesting to see the interaction. A developer would come, and I had examples only in Python, and they'll say, "Oh, I'm a JavaScript person. Do you know how to code Python?" No, not really. Well, no worries. You have a code assistant. And let's just do some CRUD operations, some simple stuff. And they were able to code without any knowledge of Python, because as a developer, you know approximately what it's supposed to look like. And just trying it out, and the inline suggestions, that's what we kind of fine-tuned to work in Q Developer, and they work very well. And developers wow, I can code in Python now as opposed to JavaScript.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of from that aha moment when you realize that, I suppose, as somebody once said to me, English is the new developer language. If you can create a prompt with good intent as to what you're trying to do, the code assistants make a really good first pass at it. I do believe that obviously you kind of need to have a certain level of knowledge to understand, is what's presented back to me from them correct? But usually it is. And with a bit of trial and error, you can massage that to get it even better as well too. But the ability to be able to say, I want to do X, Y, or Z in an English natural language prompt, and to have lines or a few lines or even a block of code returned by the code assistants is very empowering. And as I said, both for this junior developer, helps them get started, and the senior developer gets rid of the boring, mundane work perhaps as well too.
Exactly. And I also know throughout this process of fine-tuning the model, you actually was responsible for, you and your team was responsible for the quality. So I know you guys ran through several iterations assessing the quality of the code that was suggested. Can you talk a little bit more about what your team did? Who was on the team? How did they go about it? I think other partners might be interested in this similar topic.
Yeah, but when we started, we picked just 5 languages, and we picked that what are the 18, 20 basic CRUD operations that somebody might like to do, and what do we consider best practices? So we looked at evaluating Q for developers and seeing, if I give it this prompt, what does it return now? How does that compare to what I would expect at my level in MongoDB Atlas expertise? And where is the delta? What's wrong? What's different? And so we worked with the AWS team in sending this information back. That initial phase was quite, I suppose, human heavy. We needed a good few bodies. So I picked, obviously some of our language specialists across both the DevRel team and the product team here. And we got them essentially to test out the product, give us their anecdotal feedback, put themselves in the mindset of, am I a junior developer? Am I a senior developer? Give them almost a persona. But as we moved forward, we got a little bit more, I suppose, organized, for want of a better word, in how we went about this. So we were better able to give a prompt with the best practice, and then see what Q would return back, and then be able to measure that. And indeed, the data science team in AWS were able to measure it for us in 2 levels in terms of exact similarity. In other words, was it the same as the best practice that we would expect? or edit match. In other words, was it nearly the same? And with a little bit of tweaking, could it be made perfect? And that's kind of where we started. And we moved on then from actually the code type training to where we are now, when, Q also is Q chat, right? Inside in the IDEs and inside in the console, where you can ask questions. And if you're looking for information on MongoDB or looking for information on document databases, essentially you can ask the questions there. And in doing so, we also had to think long and hard about, MongoDB have got lots of code samples inside in our docs, but we only have kind of one comment or one paragraph before that code sample. And in fact, we needed to put ourselves in the shoes of a developer in the many different ways that they might prompt for that code completion. And in doing so, we reversed, I suppose, some of the LLMs. We fed the LLMs code and we said, please, can you give us back 3 to 5 ways that a developer might ask for this particular block of code in terms of what they were looking for. So again, as I said earlier, a lot of learning in the process, and we continue to do so, but we're seeing the tools get better and better each iteration. So it's been great to work with the team there.
Yeah, just curious actually. So you mentioned it's a lot of manual effort. Were you able to eventually automate some of this? Because I would assume when you generate a program, you can technically run it and see if it gives result, or this is still manual at this stage of the evaluation.
We currently have a number of these pieces of the puzzle, as it were, automated now, because I couldn't be calling on my colleagues and extra members of the team each and every time we needed to do this. So what we've created is almost a testing data set on MongoDB now that we're able to get access to be able to run that, not wholly automatically, but we invoke it. We get it to run. We're not doing kind of regular cron jobs automatically in the background, but we get it to run. And we've done it in a few different ways. We do it for code, but we also do it for knowledge of MongoDB as well too. And that's been interesting to see how all the different tools stack up to each other and how the different LLMs have performed in terms of their knowledge of MongoDB as well too.
Yeah, this is interesting because I see this as a broader trend for generative AI applications. When people evaluate quality or consistency of the responses, it ends up being a mixed approach. Some stuff can be automated because it's a factual data that comes back, that's easy to check for the specific value or even specific maybe keywords. Maybe even you can do semantic search in the results, but some things are inherently subjective and requires a manual effort, a team of people, engineers.
Yeah, and we're looking, I don't think we'll ever fully automate this. I think somebody will always be involved in even looking at the results of some of the automated testing that we do. But, we've leveraged, I see, if you look out in this space, Human Eval is one of the main code sets or code templates out there that you can run as a data set through any of the LLMs to see how those LLMs are good at coding themselves. So we've leveraged some of the information and knowledge from how they structure things to create a similar data set for MongoDB to use against the code assistants and the LLMs that are out there.
That's great. And I know this was just one of the integrations that we've done together, and we're constantly innovating together. We're trying to do new things. And I want to pivot more towards what is MongoDB's experience as an AWS partner? Like we know on the technical side, we work with this. We also have in various programs. We have competencies which you participate in. But talk a little bit more about the experience as a partner that you have on AWS.
I suppose the key thing for us is, for us, we need to make, as I said at the beginning, developers' lives easier. And we know that developers will choose the tools that they're happiest with, most familiar with, or the tools that will get the job done for them. So the key for MongoDB was essentially not to compartmentalize anything, was to work with all our partners to make sure that we could collaborate together. With regards to products, we have a number of integrations with AWS core products. That can be from EventBridge to Lambda to S3. We talk about generative AI into SageMaker. Other things like the Kinesis Data Firehose as well too. And more recently, a lot of our time has been spent working with Amazon Bedrock. Again, showing And it's super easy. And I know that we've a demo if people check other videos that we've done together, but it's incredibly easy to have MongoDB as a vector store in Bedrock. You upload, and we see actually in MongoDB that most of our enterprise use cases of generative AI at the moment fall into RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. And Bedrock is ideal for that. You can upload your content, etc., to S3, and via Bedrock, it'll get automatically embedded and stored as vectors back in MongoDB Atlas. And then you can create your applications on top of that. So it's super powerful. So for all of the key, as we see it, AWS products, we have an integration for as well too. And as you mentioned, we're also, key partners in a lot of areas as well. We've got startup programs, etc. We do a lot of hackathons together. Thankfully, AWS are a kind sponsor of many of the hackathons our DevRel team run. And also one of the key, I think, easiest paths for any developer who's inquisitive about MongoDB and maybe already in the AWS ecosystem is the fact that MongoDB is available directly through AWS Marketplace as well. So you don't need to go and talk to finance or procurement. You don't need to go and get more agreements signed. You can simply go to the marketplace and start using MongoDB with all of the AWS account and setup and payments, etc., that you already have.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, marketplace is definitely one of the easiest way to get started with partner products on AWS. And there are a variety of partners, and you obviously are there as well. And I do agree with you on the knowledge bases in Bedrock. That was the big splash at the New York.local event that you had, and we keep promoting it. Like, we jointly promote this now in the field. We're talking to the customers, we're trying to run events. And before we kind of close out, any suggestion to other partners how they can work better with AWS? Like, from your experience, like what can they do to partner better?
Good question. I think the key to our partnership, certainly from my perspective, has been, I suppose, two things. I think the cadence of communication. We have regular meetings together with the various folks and stakeholders in AWS. And I think also the consistency of the team, actually, to be honest. We work with mostly the same folks in AWS, yourself included, Igor. And it's great to have that level of consistency because I think we understand how each party works. We understand what's important to each party. And I think from my developer relations perspective, we love creating content. MongoDB's developer relations team have what we call the Developer Center at developer.mongodb.com, where all of our content appears that we create, all of our articles, all of our tutorials. But the key thing in our relationship with AWS is that we get people such as yourselves, Igor, to also co-author these articles. And we also get these articles over back on your properties on AWS too. So I think the relationship has been very collaborative. We both have a mutual benefit from what we're doing together. We're making developers' jobs easier. We're making developers' lives easier. And, the examples that we have and the way that we show these on both of our platforms and both of our blogs and both of our online activities and both of our in-person activities is key to a strong partnership. We turn up at the AWS summits and take a stand and do our demos and get our talks. Likewise, AWS turns up at our MongoDB.locals where suitable and do the same thing. And I think that's it's a very beneficial partnership between us. And I think that's what works. I think if people turn up and put out their best work and are easy to work with, then you'll get the opportunities like we had with Q for Developer to do more work. It's been great to get some early invites, Q for Developer, Bedrock, etc., extended from AWS towards MongoDB because of that relationship.
Well said. We are nearing the end of our show. You will drop ways to contact you in the show notes. Pretty sure it's LinkedIn, X, whatever.
All the usuals, yeah.
All the usuals. Anything you want the listeners to do or check out on MongoDB? Before we close, anything they want to?
Yeah, well, look, I think the key thing, as I just mentioned, our output of most of our developer relations activity is our developer center at MongoDB. So that's simply developer.mongodb.com. We're very, very active on YouTube and on LinkedIn. We do a lot of streaming, as you mentioned earlier, Igor. So please go to YouTube, like and subscribe MongoDB there. Go to LinkedIn, follow us to keep up to date with all the latest events. And in the events, if you go to mongodb.com/events, you'll find those .locals I talked about. And indeed, we do a lot of meetup groups, the MongoDB mugs around the world as well too. So check those out because there might be one coming to a city near you. And generally speaking, again, in terms of being a good partner, AWS are pretty much represented at a lot of these events that we do in person. So you might get to meet representatives from both companies there.
Awesome. Yeah, I will drop all of those links into show notes. Thank you, Shane, for coming. It was a great show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Cheers.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.